So what I want to talk about today is called code blocks. The way that you've been working, where you had all of your code in a sketch and it just all flowed right after another, is really not the way that we're going to be working the rest of the semester. We're going to be taking this code and splitting it into two different sections, and we're going to call them code blocks. Now this is just like in web. You could think of how you had your CSS in the head and all your HTML in the body. It's the same kind of thing. So how do we separate them out? We're going to have the two code blocks. One is called setup and the other is called draw. So the things that are in the setup are things that won't change. You can think of the setup kind of like the stage for your action. So that would be like your background color, the size of your canvas, if you were working with frame rate, just so things that would not change. Where we're going with processing is eventually we want to be able to create animations, right? We want to be able to get things to look like they're moving, and to do that they have to be in the draw code block, because the draw code block has a cool feature, which is it actually has an automatic loop. So this is how we can get things to animate. Let's talk about the syntax. How does it look? And again, I'm just going to reference you back to web. Remember, in web, when you're looking at the code on a page, you have your head tags, you have your style tags, they have opening and closing tags, your body tags, opening and closing. It's the same sort of thing here. So here's our setup, and the syntax is it starts with the word void, and notice there's no capitalization. Void setup. We have an open and close parenthesis, open curly bracket, and a closing curly bracket. And then whatever code we want is in between, and notice, that syntax you guys should be familiar with. They have semicolons at the end and so on and so forth. So this is our open and closing bracket. Really important to have those. And then if we look at the draw, same thing. It starts with the word void, and then we have draw, no capitalization, open and close parentheses, open and close curly bracket, and with all of our code that we may potentially want to animate. Even if it's not going to animate, we're going to pretty much take all of our code and put it inside of the draw. Just the things that we know for sure we don't want to animate. So I'm going to go back to my cityscape, and I'm going to add the void setup, and I'm going to wrap it around my size and my background and put that closing bracket. I get this error message here, everything's freaking out, because once you have a void setup, you have to have a void draw. So void draw, open curly bracket, go down to the bottom, all the way at the bottom, and put my closing curly bracket. Okay? So that's how you take some existing code and you get it set up into code blocks. Now when I play it, it's going to look the exact same. But in a second here, I'm going to get to, oh, my size is way off. But I'm going to get to how you can make this already start to look a little bit like an animation just by changing the opacity. The reason it doesn't look any different, so what's happening here with draw is that it is going and it reads all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom, and then it goes right back up to the top of draw, and it just keeps repeating it. It doesn't look like an animation because it's just drawing on top of itself at this point. Okay. So the syntax void, if you want to know, just means that we're not asking this code block to return any information to us. So if you got really advanced into processing, you can write code blocks that could be connected to the stock market, for example, or to a current weather feed, and you would be asking it to go and to retrieve that information and bring it back to you. But in this case, we're just asking it to simply render the code that's in here. So that's why it has the word void in front of it. Now this I've already talked about. Draw has that automatic loop feature. So to do your next project, this Kandinsky project, you don't really have to have the code blocks. You could do it in the exact same way you did the cityscape. But the reason I am explaining it kind of early on is because if you use code blocks, there's a really cool feature called tweak mode. And that can only work if you have the code blocks. So what is tweak mode? I just need 1 second. I have to scale my cityscape larger. So if you ever want to make something double the size, oh, sorry. I actually want to have that in my draw. So let me see if that's good size. Okay, so now you can see the cityscape. So let's imagine I wanted to adjust this Ferris wheel perhaps, or something else here. Currently we go and we change the code here and then we press play, but I'm going to save my project. With tweak mode I can watch the results live. So to use tweak mode, I'm going to go up to Sketch, Tweak, and I'll move this kind of to the side. So what's happening here, oh sorry, lost both my things here, is now anything that can be edited is underlined. So let's just say, I don't know what I want to change. I could even just change a color and I could see the results live here. Building 9. I'm going to change the shape here. I'm going to make it larger. Okay. Do you see building 9? It moved a little bit. It's moving over here. I'm going to change the fill. Oh, that's a boring one. Let's do something over here. Okay, change this now to be orange. I'll go and I'll change this one, building 8. I might be covering up building 8. I'm going to look for the Ferris wheel. Oh, where'd that Ferris wheel go? Okay, here's Ferris wheel. What can we change about the Ferris wheel? It just has a circle. I'm going to change the width of it, width and height. So I'm making it larger here. So if I like the changes, I hit stop, ask me if I want to keep them, and I'm going to say yes. And now I'll press play again so you can see my Ferris wheel's a lot bigger. I changed this to be orange. I don't know, I changed something over here as well. So that can really, really help you with your projects, but you can only use tweak mode if you have your code blocks. Alright, so back to my PowerPoint here. You are going to be looking for a piece by Kandinsky. I'll explain this more in another video. And one of the things you have to consider is that a lot of his pieces have opacity. So now that I've introduced the code blocks so that you can use tweak mode, I want to talk about how this will affect opacity. Let's take this code here, which you can get from the PowerPoint, and I'm going to put it into a new sketch. And so what I have two ellipses, and they both have a fill of black with a low opacity. And my background color is kind of like a red, has a lot of red in it. So I'm going to press play. And I don't know if you saw that, but this one actually became darker. So which one is which? The one that is black, so they should both be kind of a red color, but the one that is black is the one that's in the draw. The one that maintained the lower opacity is the one that's in the setup. Because when it was in the setup, it started at the top, it put in a fill of 0 with 20% opacity, it put the ellipse, and then it jumps down to the draw. But the draw gives me an ellipse with this opacity, and then it draws another ellipse with that opacity, and another one, and it does it 60 times per second. So it's actually still adding on to it, so that's what makes it black. It loses its opacity because you keep pasting the same circle over and over it. I'll press play again, and this time I'm going to lower the frame rate to 10 so we can watch it happening. So you see that happening? Okay, so it's something to consider if you have picked a Kandinsky piece that has very low opacity, then you may have to have that part of your sketch, that code, in the setup. So kind of traditionally, we only have a few things in the setup, and that would be our size, our background color, our frame rate. But the exception would be is if it's something that you need to keep a low opacity for. Alright, that's all I'm going to talk about in this video to try to keep it short, and then in the next one I'm going to talk about a couple of other shapes.